Welcome to the iGamingCare podcast. Safer gambling, smarter choices. Weekly expert-led podcast from iGamingCare.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our iGamingCare podcast. Today, I have a very, very special guest. It's Ladan. Ladan is a Ph.D. candidate in psychology at the University of Bergen in Norway. Her focus is on health and clinical psychology. Her expertise extends to therapeutic approaches like cognitive behavior therapy, intense short-term dynamic psychotherapy, and it will be interesting to understand what that is, and acceptance and commitment therapy. She's a reviewer of various publications like Springer Nature and Sage. Ladan earned her master's degree ranking first GPA out of 50 students. And Ladan, you are fluent in Norwegian, English, and Persian. Welcome to our podcast. It's an honor.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Andreas. Thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure for me. And absolutely, I'm very delighted and very motivated. It's really evoked my enthusiasm for this podcast. I do hope we can talk a very nice and interesting topic with each other.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. And let's share with our audience where we met. So we actually met in Oslo, Norway, at the SNSUS Conference. I know that SNSUS is a Scandinavian word, but
Yes.
maybe we can start with that. I cannot pronounce what it really means. Maybe you help us.
Yes, we had the chance to meet during SNSUS Conference in Oslo, and it was a great environment for sharing the ideas across research and practice. Yes, SNSUS is a very typical Norwegian, and actually you can see there's some shadows of this on different Nordic countries. But I really enjoyed the SNSUS Conference and the space where the people from different fields and research, they could contribute with each other and could have a real conversation about different aspects of gambling from, for example, the reducing gambling related harm or proactive call, responsible gambling, or etc. I think that it was very great opportunity, at least for me, to meet you and others who care deeply about these issues.
Yeah, I totally agree. It was an outstanding conference. For me, it was a very special one.
Yeah.
I attend quite a lot of conferences in the field of gambling, and those that I usually attend are driven by the industry.
Yes.
We might have one or two sessions where we talk about addiction and responsible gambling, but SNSUS was different. It was
Yes.
the scientific side, and I must say it was very reflected. So people were not in the trenches saying gambling is good or bad. They reflected on it, and this is what I liked a lot. But before we dive into this conference and our takeaways, I am super excited how you ended up in Bergen, Norway, doing a PhD in psychology with a special interest that drove you to this gambling-related conference. Please share how that came.
Yes. I'm a PhD candidate in psychology at University of Bergen, and I am a member of one of the reputable research group in Norway, is Espelforsk. This group focus on different part of addiction, but mainly on gambling and gaming. And the headmaster of this research group, it's one of my supervisors, Professor Ståle Pallesen. I think at least for me, it was very, very nice experience to come and see how different people really think about the gambling. And especially because I'm a member of this group, I really enjoyed the presentation that you have, because you focus on industry, and I'm as a academia always focus on some parts of gambling that I know this as a disorder. And we had a conversation, and our supervisors really encouraged the PhD student to attend to this conference to really gain information and to develop our knowledge. Then we can update ourselves about it. And in my point of view, it was very, very nice opportunity for me as a PhD student to talk with different professors and gain a different experience and see that how different countries, because at this conference, mainly you can see that from the Nordic countries, but still you can see that other researchers from all around the world were on that conference.
For me, this conference was interesting because I did not feel a gap between the industry and
Yes,
academia. So
excellent.
very often I see that there's a shyness,
Yes,
especially on the side of industry, which I do understand
yes,
if you are on different fronts where the perception is all of academia is blaming gambling for everything, while academia thinks all the guys in the gambling industry are bad guys. I think this I have not felt in Oslo. Still, I see
yeah,
that for some people I had the pleasure to meet, for example, joining a podcast with someone who is on both chairs, let's say industry and academia like me, was something that was difficult for them, where they say, I have to ask for approval at my faculty and so on. How was that for you? Do you have any concerns saying if I get engaged with the podcast that is published by a player in the industry, do you feel your independence is endangered, or could you run into trouble with your university?
very nice question. At least I have to say that I have this right to say my opinion, and I have this right to talk with anyone in this area, because as someone who is a psychologist, for me it's very important to have a look at this disorder from different perspectives. So I think it is very important for all of us to look from different perspectives. But honestly, regarding this, I don't think so that there is a concern. Although we can see that always there is a controversies between industry and academia, because each group wants to say that no, the gambling is not devastating as the academia said, and academia wants to say that no, the gambling is not, it will be not defined as you are defining. But honestly, for me, it was very important to have a look at it from different perspectives, as I mentioned before. And I would like to appreciate you. Thank you. Because then I can gain the information from different perspectives. And I think that we should be open. Really, we should be open, because we can't change anything without the help of different groups.
That's a good point. So to give you an example, I've recently read a post on LinkedIn
Yeah.
where I would say it was a reflected post. It was about how can we reduce gambling harm risks. And I wrote a comment. And my comment went like, we all have to work together
Yes.
to find a solution. And we is the industry, it's academia, it's the news and the public, and it's the players also, because I think we have to catch them. And what I got as a response was super aggressive. How can you say the industry should be involved in this solution? These are the villains, and we have to exclude them, which I found interesting. I would say if you say there are some people in this industry that are not the nicest, probably true, but to generalize and say this side is bad, the other side is good, and we have to do that independently, I have a big issue if that is efficient in the all, if you just look at a pragmatic way.
Yeah.
And in this regard, I would like to dig into a little bit into your PhD project.
Yes, that's true.
Can you share a bit what the focus of your PhD thesis is? Will be. You're
Absolutely.
not finished yet.
Yes, absolutely. My research focuses on gambling and gaming disorders. This is very general things. But if I want to talk by the details, I can say that we will focus on different risk factors. That these risk factors, you can categorize this as there's some risk factors that they are very strong and they are very deep. But what do I mean by deep? I mean that like childhood trauma, something which happened many, many years ago. And others can be like the personality features, in which we will use the hexacle questionnaire, which you can see very stable variables as risk factors. And these can be and we include the very changeable variables. These can include anxiety and depression. The other perspective or other categories in this area is we can categorize from, I really can't to say that anxiety and depression are very simple signs or very simple things. No, or simple mental disorders, but they are more common. But then we will evaluate them. We will have another category that we focus on suicidality and self-harm, that they are super dangerous and need more and more attention. We will evaluate this variety range of risk factors. And something that I would like really to mention is that I'm particularly interested in understanding how people's day-to-day experience, anxiety, boredom, sleep, you can see very daily activities which influence their gambling and gaming behavior. And I will also study all of these and using the longitudinal diary data, and I will use the network analysis, which is one of the sophisticated statistical method.
That's an interesting thing. What I understand when I talk to other scientists is when are people at risk to gamble? And if I understood you correctly, if you have psychological issues, mental problems, like the disorder or fear, or you have a relationship issue, gambling is something where you escape or where you cover the problem with another activity. So would you agree to that? Is that a typical mechanic? What drives people into gambling?
Yes, thank you so much for this really thought-provoking analysis. That's a fantastic thing. And the escapism, it's one of the mechanisms that we can see. And one of the things that I really would like to highlight on my PhD project is that we will ask 4 times in a day that for example, did you had a conflict with your partner? Then we will ask about the daily hassle. Then we will ask about the anxiety. Exactly. We want to see that, because when people feel like this, they will not wait. They will gamble immediately. And we really want to see that how this can push to someone for doing gambling to feel a little better.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
For me, it's a fascinating point, because when you look at gambling harm and responsible gambling, my feeling is that regulators and lawmakers, which are advised by experts, of course, try to ring fence gambling. We put a cap on the amounts you can do, limit the options that you have, like you have waiting times between 2 games, for example. And for me, it's not automatically clear that such borders really address the issue, because you still have a family issue, or you run out of money, or you are afraid of losing your job. So one of my questions is always, if you have escapism by gambling and you can't do it, it's stopped, then you probably do something else. That could be alcohol or something good. You run a marathon, whatever. But what is your thought? What is a good way to help people? Can we set outside borders? Do we have to get their psyche and their mindset? Do you already have insights from your research if what is the best option?
No. One of the aim of my research is that we really want to know which of these daily habits has more and a stronger relationship with gambling. And network analysis, it's the only methodology that can show this, because most of the time we can say that there is significant relationship between alcohol and gambling. There is significant relationship between depression, anxiety, but we really can't say that which one is most important. And during these 40 days, actually are really doing our best to know that which one is most important. And then we can categorize this, that alcohol can really trigger this network or depression or anxiety or daily hassle or conflict with a partner, because this is the 40 days and we will ask 4 times a day. So I would really cross my finger that at the end of this, because always this is very controversial topic, that we really don't know that which one can really stimulate and trigger this network. We really hope that at the end we understood this. And then I think that can be the enormous achievement in this area. Then we can go to the psychotherapist and we offer to them that this is one of the important risk factors in this area.
It's an interesting research. Out of curiosity, how many candidates do you examine, and how did you find them?
That's a very nice question. First, I have to say that now we are in the pilot study. We are in the pilot stage, but we will recruit 200. But I have to completely mention this. First, we will conduct a study 1. In a study 1, as I mentioned before, we will evaluate many risk factors. And then, because we will use GASA and PGSI questionnaire for distinguish that which participant has a high score of gambling and gaming. Then we will recruit, because the first study it's 2,000 participants, and then we will recruit the 200 from each groups, the gambling and gaming, and then we will conduct the diary study, and then we will evaluate them. Again, something that I would like really to mention, I know that it can be a little difficult to grasp, but in the diary study, I mean that the study 2 and the study 3, we will have observation, number of the number of things that we will see 4 times during a day. Maybe in these 2 research, the number of participants would be better that I defined like this. But the data collection will be conducted, and actually now we are in the process of collecting the pilot study by the Prolific website, and which I think that it is very user friendly, but of course that you have to pay.
One reason why I ask about candidates is the secrecy that I sometimes see about gambling.
That's gambling.
So I live in a country where, in Germany, where you would not go out and proudly say, I'm a gambler. So you do that alone in the basement in the dark. How is the situation in Norway? Is that something people talk about openly?
Well, I think in Norway, gambling is somewhat socially acceptable, but still carries a degree of stigma, especially when it becomes problematic. The state control model aims to reduce harm, but many people still access offshore sites. And from my perspectives, really, I think that while gambling is often seen as a normal leisure activity, the conversation around risk and harms need to be more open, at least in this area.
Yeah, so this brings me to this Snooze conference again.
Yes.
And I thought, what are my takeaways? And exactly the point that you brought up, this relative acceptance in society that gambling is okay-ish, is very different to what I perceive in some other countries. And my first takeaway of Snooze is that many speakers mentioned people play for fun.
Yes.
That is even more important than playing for winning, and that many players have enough rationalism and understanding that in the end they will lose. So it was this comparison, like you put X amount, you gamble, and it's the same like you go to a restaurant or you buy a ticket for the cinema. When the money is spent, it's over. On the other hand, an addictive behavior is you lose money and then you play to recover.
Yes.
This seems to be a minority, but if you're one of those who cannot stop, it's drama. So what is your take on that? Is gambling for fun, and are people for the most part reasonably rational and stop when the money is gone?
It's a very, very important thing to really have a look at it, that And sometimes I think that this can be a little difficult when we want to distinguish the line from, is it really leisure activity or it has potentially harm? Because in my point of view, the two parts will be completely engaged in this area. One of them, it's a leisure. And if I want to just a little talk by the details, your brain and your reward system will automatically work. And then you feel enjoyment, then you feel leisure, then pleasure, and something will happen in your mind. But then another aspect, the financial aspects, will be stimuli in this area. And when you lose money, then boom, something can happen here. I think the line between how this can be the leisure until how this can be problematic, I think the conversation around this really need to be more open, Because of this is still, Andreas, I think that it's very important that we talk with different peoples, with different ideas about the gambling.
This concept of openness is also an important one from my point of view.
Yeah.
Gambling is a game that can go on unnoticed. So even if you have an issue that is not visible, and I see two ways. One is the gambler finds out I have an issue and talks to someone seeking help, or someone else finds out that's a problem gambler and the gambler is approached. I've heard some very good examples at the conference in Norway that this can work. But overall, to me, the more you do gambling in the dark and the more it's a forbidden fruit, I'm afraid the less a gambler is open to seek help. So you are the psychologist here. Would it be helpful to make gambling even more socially accepted? That people raise their voice and say, I have an issue? Or is it better to put it aside and say, we fence it, we are repressive, we don't make it attractive?
That's a very nice question. I think a stigma, it's one of the important problem that we can see not only on gambling, but also in all of the disorders. Stigma can potentially destroy the treatment because people really afraid. And there were a very nice and I think a very fantastic research, if I'm not mistaken, it was in the United States, that they evaluate people when diagnosed by cancer, they feel less, this is very important, less pressure than when they receive a diagnosis about depression and anxiety. So this means that stigma is very important. And when you categorize them that you are a gambler and you are a problematic one, then yes, this can raise this barrier that he or she will not come to us because they think that, and most of the time, I think that this really depends on the country, that if they think that, okay, this is just fun and is a leisure, is a recreational activity, then this can make a situation hard that they come to psychologists, to psychotherapists, even to psychiatrists for finding a solution and treatment for their problems. So I would really like to mention that please avoid such an enormous stigma and be a little open about these groups because potentially they think that they don't have any problem.
I see.
Yeah.
For me, another point is the lack of reliable data.
Yes.
So when I look into statistics, and I'm right now preparing a keynote that I have to give next week, the ratio of how many people are problem gamblers goes from anywhere, let's say 0.5% of the population to 4% of the population, depending on the country. But that is, we are millions of people beyond the upper and the lower number. So it's super difficult to say, how do you act? Do you have a massive problem, a small problem? Can you pinpoint it? Do you, during your studies, came across solid, sound numbers, how big the gambling addiction problem is at all in terms of societies?
No. Do you mean that we will focus on prevalence?
Yeah, it's. I think it's not your research. You're looking into what triggers it. But
Yes.
I'm always lost when I say how many people have a problem, and I
Yeah.
don't get a strong answer. It's if I ask 3 scientists, I get 3 numbers.
Yes, absolutely. And Andros, when you read the different papers, you can see even the different numbers, different percentage, and this can be really vary from the one research to another one perspective to another one, because I think at least we can say that we have to accept this, that some people do the gamble as a recreational. And in my point of view, at least knowing this can really help us to focus on problematic one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Agree. And coming back to your research,
Yes.
I understand you will identify what triggers gambling, a very, very superfluous assessment, and that there are certain things in people like childhood experience, etc., that makes them more prone to gamble. When I look into a lot of studies,
Yes.
I see it's also certain groups who are at risk. And to summarize that, not saying it's a causality, but at least it's a correlation. It's
Yeah.
young men, low income, poor education. So that seems to be group number 1 that gambles all day long. Do you have a similar view on that, or is there more, or am I wrong?
We say in line with you. We can see this on men. Yes, this is very. In my point of view, it is not strange because people from a poor economical situation, they really want to do the gamble to find more. But at least I have to say that we can see this even in rich groups as well. But I think that one of the important things in this area is that we really have to focus on adolescent, and because this group sometimes the situation can be very, and we can see the different types of gambling, mainly online gambling on them. And I think that this group really needs to be more focused regarding the categories that you have 100%. I'm right.
And I also remember a workshop at the SNSUS Conference
Yes.
where we discussed how can you approach these adolescent young players. And someone came up with we could get the parents involved. But
Yes.
that was pretty soon stopped because everyone said if you are 16, 17, 18, 19, you do not listen to your parents. You
Yeah.
listen to influencers, social media, your friends, your peers. Do you have a view how you can best approach these young people in order to drive them into a direction where they do not become addicted gamblers?
There's something that we can at least mentioning in this area is that the adolescent really needs to be focused not only by gambling but also in many other things around them, because they are egocentrism. There's something that Piaget mentioned. And I really like this because in his theory, he really mentioned this strongly, and we can see the shadow of this in many aspects. For example, adolescents believe that if I use drug, then I will not be addicted. If I drink a lot, I will not be addicted. And if I drive so fast, there is no car crash. The egocentrism can be really highlighted in 2 times. First, it can be happen on the childhood that I'm not really wants to talk about it, and then here. The main things, at least I can say nowadays, the role of social media and gambling and gaming platform is such a crazy high. Some controls in this area can be useful, or even though I think that the psychologists and psychiatrists should be very more accurate about these parts, and they should be more active on Instagram, on Snapchat, or some areas like this to really give them the information about that, how this can really affect your life. And in my point of view, sometimes this can be a little hard, but I think finding very correct peers can really save this group. Then you can at least control some problematic things, and knowledge against, and not very directly, but knowledge against the gambling and how this can really affect when you put yourself at the risk of problematic can really help them.
Would you suggest that, for example, in advertising or in influencer videos, that there should be a warning, like we put it on cigarette packs? So where it says smoking harms your health, should we say gambling can ruin your life? Or maybe this exists in Norway, I don't know, but would that be an idea that could be helpful?
Like this, because you mentioned a very beautiful example that if you buy the cigarettes, many times you can see that, oh, please do not smoke. It's very harmful for your body. This can push you on the terms of the in terms of the cancer. But I think they regulate gambling advertising on social media platform. There's some things that at least ban the some of this, or there's some policy in this area that can ban the gambling ads, because one of the variables that I evaluate on my research is the gambling advertisement, and these are very important. And when you open it, wow, you will bombard by many gambling advertisements. This should be really banned. Or awareness, really, I think that awareness is very great, but very a little, I think that indirectly, or teach the adolescent how gambling operates, use the psychological tricks and social media marketing to hook them, really hook them. Yeah.
With gambling, you touch a point that is heavily discussed in Germany.
Yeah.
And many people say it should be completely forbidden. And others say if we forbid advertising for gambling, the players will gamble anyhow, and they will drift away into the black market without any direction, any protection, and any information. So those, and of course that's also the industry, says we better advertise, so at least we can direct. And the other argument is if people want to play, they will play, and advertising directs, but it doesn't trigger. So I think it's an open discussion. There are very different views. Do you have an opinion on that? Would you, for example, go ahead and say we stop advertising?
This is really some things that you and someone in this industry can really talk about it, and obviously this can really raise a controversies, because at least I think a psychologist can do this, promote a positive alternative and coping skills. Because whenever you observe that advertising, okay, how you can cope this, how mindfulness, how sport, how different these things can really help you, and you are using the coping strategy regarding this, because still I think that the loot box or casino or many of these, they have a very strong advertisement, and I think at least adding a warning labels and parental control can be useful, or include the gambling risk disclosures in apps, in app stores, and in game rating can be useful and fruitful in this area.
So that's a good point. To give you an example, I work for an affiliate. So we attract people from the internet and then send them to someone who offers gambling. This is how we make our money. And on our affiliate page, for example, we have a self-test. So you can answer 10 questions, and then the system will tell you, well, probably you are okay, proceed with care. Or if the warning signs are big enough, it will tell you, no, it's not your day, you should not gamble. And then you can also not just click and say, I don't care, I gamble. You have to leave the page. Is there, or do you know of scientific opinions? Can you filter problem gamblers before they gamble with such a test? Or is it something that you do for marketing but is not effective? Are there opinions, or is that something you can comment on?
Do you mean by the something that
If say with 10 smart questions, can you get at least a warning or a red flag if that person who answered that question could be a problem gambler and should better stop? Or does it take more to do the diagnosis?
Yes, this is an excellent question. We should evaluate them by reputable tools, and we really can't say okay, I think that you are gamblers and you are a problematic one. One of the reputable index in this area is CPGI, Canadian Problem Gambling Index. This is widely used. I have used this on my research, and the purpose of this questionnaire to identify the individual at risk for the gambling problem and wants to measure the severity of gambling related to the harm. The scoring is that from the 0, which is the never, to 3, almost and always. And it has the 9 items, and it will be asked that how often each situation occurred in the past 12 months. And in my point of view, at least we are using this. And, it has the different score, and the 0 obviously means that no problem. Yes, non-problematic gambling here. And from, if I'm not mistaken, 1 to 2, it's the low risk gambling. And if you are 8 and more, you are a problem gambler.
Yes.
And I think that it is very reputable, and many psychologists and many researchers use it.
Okay, that's good. So it means at least it's a meaningful suggestion to players to run through such a test before they actually proceed. I would like to come back to another thing that you mentioned about the young people, where you say they feel like they cannot be wounded. They will ride a car at max speed without having accidents and everything. And I would like to add an anecdote to that. At a university class, we looked into gambling in a seminar, and a seminar group did a little survey. They asked the students, do you think advertising for gambling and gambling should be completely forbidden? And 75% of the students said, yes, it should be forbidden. And the class looked there and said, can that be? Then the second question was asked, did you play for money in the last 12 months? And the same group that has said it should be forbidden with 75% answered with also 75%, yes, we played for money in the last 6 months or whatever the time was. And to me, this shows if you are Gen Z, if you are young, you feel you are not a vulnerable group. You have to protect others maybe, but yourself are in a position where you don't need protection because nothing can harm you. So I can only support your point that if we want to influence someone, stop someone, it's the young guys. And on the other hand, I also think maybe it's the conclusion of your study also when you say what drives people into gambling or into addiction. It's very often personal problems.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the solution is making people more happy.
Yeah.
If we have less problems and more to do, like we have little problem and we love nature, we go hiking or we paint or read books. Those people who are at ease, happy with their life without relationship and financial issues, it seems that those people have much less risk to run into gambling issues than people who are poor, problem-laden, and don't know what to do with their time. Is that a fair assessment, or is it too simplified?
Yes, we can say this. Because when we see the loneliness, because loneliness is one of the other variables that I evaluate. When you are alone, you want to engage on a group. And then you will gamble. When you have a conflict with your partner, then you need, as you mentioned very perfectly, you need to escape from this situation. And escapism will automatically happen here. And then you will gamble. But when you have a everything in your life, it's okay at least, but not with the crazy high fluctuations, then it might be that you only gamble as a leisure activity, not as something that was a stimuli by some negative risk factors, not by something that you had a stress, you had anxiety, you had a depression, and you want to just feel a little calm down, and because of this you gamble.
I understand. So out of curiosity, Adam, do you gamble?
Oh, no, that was a very good question.
It's a blunt question.
No, you are very welcome to ask me. But Andres, honestly, I think gambling is very difficult. It is not at all easy to learn. And someone explained something to me, and at the end I was like this, that, sorry, I really can't understand that. What did you do? And I'm sure that if I gamble, I will lose lots of money. Oh, I will never put myself in this situation. But how about you, Andras?
Actually, I don't.
Oh, yeah.
So, admittedly, we had a company conference
Yeah.
with some 30 people, and since we are in this industry, all together we said, let's go into a casino and have the experience. But from a personal point of view, I don't find it exciting. So
Yes.
if I watch a roulette wheel, a number will come up, pure luck. And if I stand in front of a slot machine, which I could even put on auto mode and see what happens, I also find that exciting. I play. So I love playing chess
Yeah.
because, in my opinion, it's not luck. So it's a battle between brains. But gambling, I have a personal view on it. I think governments should not be a nanny state. I would say people should be free what they do. They should be free how they spend their money. They should be free what they eat and drink, to the extent that other people are harmed. And to me, that means for a gambler, you also harm other people and society, especially when you are broke and when you need treatment, because all of that comes with a cost. And that to me means we have to protect people in addition to personal drama and despair. But telling people exactly what they have to do and not to do, I have a big issue with that in a free society.
And Andres, do you think that the fact that you do not gamble is influenced by the knowledge you have about the gambling?
I would say no,
Yeah.
because I was not in touch with this industry for most of my life. So I'm a latecomer, a newbie to this industry. I spent my career in industries that made something, that built airplanes and cars and things. So I never came across gambling, and I never had the urge to play. Looking at what I know now, where I'm sitting between two fronts of player protection and making money, I would say the vast majority of players is okay because they have themselves under control. And we have to focus on those who have an issue or are at risk to have an issue. No, to answer it, the fact that I don't really gamble is I don't find it exciting. It's not because I fear that I lose money. I might even have it under control.
Yeah.
If you put a small amount of money and you stop playing when it's over,
Yeah.
that could be okay. But
Yeah.
I've never tried it to an extent where I was at the threshold, so I can't tell you. And honestly, when I look at our company,
Yes.
for us, it would be lovely if many of our employees can tell the world about their experience in gambling, because we do advertising. And authenticity and personal experience is helpful when you do search engine optimization. But we also see that not necessarily half of our team is actively involved in gambling just because they work in a company that is in this industry. So we are also very technical. We analyze big data. We write fantastic texts. So it's a craftsmanship. If I were a gambling addict, I would always suggest, please don't work in that industry. Because I was, as another anecdote, I was at a conference where a German scientist explained, where do you find most people who have a gambling problem and addicts? And a group that was among the top 3 was supervisory personnel in casinos. So they had one of the highest addiction rates across society, where I said, wow, that's that's also a weird situation. Hope they have it under control.
It's a very interesting point.
Okay. Ladan, so we now know our secrets, that we
Yeah.
both are not passionate gamblers.
Yes.
We have talked about an hour. It was super interesting for me.
Yes.
Um,
And you had
and,
a very great presentation.
and now I'm flattered. But I would like to ask you the final question, because we have met at this SNSUS conference.
Yes.
What would be your 3 most important takeaways or impressions from that conference?
Little. hard question to say that I think the SNSUS conference was very rich in science and clinical knowledge and public health insight. And I think still this was my point of view, that there was a clear absence of industry voice. And but I think this conference was one of the interesting conference that I attend, and I found the conference to be a highly inspiring and well organized conference. The atmosphere was both professional and warm. And I remember that I was on a group that we talk about responsible gambling, and we should talk with the different researchers in this area. Then I have talked with many researchers from Finland, from Sweden, or even from the UK, and I could hear their observations and their knowledge about what they think about this. And I think that, yes, this atmosphere really helped me and make it easy to engage in meaningful discussions. I really cross my finger that in the upcoming conference, I can present my work as well. Because I think that this kind of activity really can help me as someone who is still not very, very expert in this area. I can gain many information, and I can develop my knowledge, and I can see my research from the other's perspective. And when someone asks me some questions, then I can understand that, okay, maybe this part of my project can be interesting, maybe this can be a little difficult to grasp, or this can be very positive points, or this needs to be a little more focused on it.
Ladan, thank you so much. It was an honor to have you in this podcast. Our iGamingCare podcast for today comes to an end. We talked to Ladan Kamzi, Ph.D. candidate in psychology at the University of Bergen. Valuable insights. Thank you, and talk to you again, I'm sure. Thanks a lot.